This is the presentation of my study titled, Computer-Mediated Intimacy and Socialification of Familyship. I am Yamaguchi, Hiroshi, from Komizawa University, Tokyo, Japan. In this study, computer-mediated intimacy, CMI, is defined as intimate relationships that people build and maintain with other human beings or virtual beings, such as computer programs or characters, by being mediated by computers or their networks. It is a part of computer-mediated communication, CMC, and it has long been one of the major themes in CMC research. It is widely known that human behavior in CMC differs from that in the real world. Traditional dating relationships that might take months to develop in the real world take weeks or even days online. In addition, long-distance romantic relationships are of equal or even more trust and satisfaction than their geographically close counterparts. CMI is particularly important in this era of new normal under the pandemic of the new coronavirus disease. Requirement of social distancing pushed away the place of work and education to online. Telework and online classes are now commonplace. This applies to the most intimate sphere of our communication. New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene advises people to avoid any type of physical contact, including sexual intercourse between couples unless they are living together. The above-mentioned changes in communication and relationships were not first caused by the coronavirus disease, rather, the disease has only facilitated a process that was already underway. The spread of computer-mediated communication in recent years has caused a rapid shift in the place where people communicate, from the real world to the online virtual world. A survey conducted by a Japanese company on the relationship between consumers' communication media, in 2019, revealed that they choose, as their primary means of communication in their daily lives, 70.8% chose LINE, which is a similar service to WhatsApp, while 51.6% chose face-to-face conversation. They prefer online to offline because it is less costly and risky, and it provides greater benefits. The benefits have been clearly recognized since the time when CMC began to spread. An online sex educator and social worker, Deborah Levine, wrote a book in 1998, encouraging college students to use their computers to flirt, start online relationships, and explore their farthest-fetched fantasies without taking real-world risk. She also advocated that the driving source behind sex in the 1990s, whether you're partnered or single, is the human imagination. Social norms change in response to changes in society and technology. Social status of women has significantly improved. It has become commonplace for them to work outside rather than stay at home as housewives. Lifestyle changed and communication technology developed. People can now have intimate time, even if they are not married or physically separated. The enjoyment of everyday life has diversified. People expect higher living standard than before. Freed from social and technological constraints, people started to carefully compare the pros and cons of engaging in deep and direct relationships, such as marriage. As a result of such comparisons, people become more and more reluctant to commit relationships involving direct and deep contact. Among major industrialized countries, the marriage rate has been decreasing since the second half of the 20th century. In addition, United Nations stated in 2015, due to the postponement of first births, the mean age of childbearing has risen sharply in Europe, North America, and in the high-income countries of Asia and Oceania, many of which have low levels of fertility and a mean age of childbearing above 30 years. In addition, there is a tendency among people to avoid sexual contact. The proportion of young Japanese adults without experience of heterosexual intercourse has increased over the past 2 decades. Among adults in their 30s, approximately 1 in 10 has had no heterosexual experience. A study reported that half of the singles reported no interest in romantic relationships, and these women and men had lower income and educational levels and were less likely to have regular employment. In the United States, higher marriage rates have been observed among well-educated women in recent years, although they tend to marry later. In addition, Higher education is also associated with the virginity of American women. In general, an intimate relationship with direct and physical contact, such as marriage and sexual intercourse, has become more costly and riskier, and, therefore, an increasingly less attractive option. Such situation should not be considered as a dystopia. It is extremely important that both women and men are not forced into unwanted sexual activity and that they can choose what they want from a variety of happiness, including sexual intimacy, according to their priorities. The diminishing relative advantage of marriage, childbirth, and having sexual relations with other person is an inevitable change due to changes in technology and society and should not be denied. In addition, this change do not force to do anything to us, only increase our alternatives. You can still choose to commit direct intimate relationship with someone, with the mutual consent. We are all better off by choosing what we want. The increased costs and risks of intimate relationships involving direct and physical contact have resulted in increased relative attractiveness of relationships without direct contact between people. That is, computer-mediated intimacy, CMI. But what do we mean by CMI? In past researches, CMI typically refers to intimate communication between people via networks of computers and smartphones and services like SNS. However, CMI in this study includes much broader alternatives. So far, few have discussed intimate relationships with robots in the context of CMC. However, it is the body of the robot controlled by the computer that mediates the communication between the autonomous robot and humans. In that sense, it is appropriate to think of love and sex with robots as part of the CMI. Such robots may be humanoid type and intelligent enough to be fully autonomous, but they do not have to be like C-3PO or Astro Boy. Even if they have only limited ability, they still can be the partner of intimate relationship. Nor do they need to be in human form. Instead, they may look like Aibo, a Sony's dog robot. An intelligent and fully autonomous humanoid robots does not exist today. It would take time, and most importantly, such robots are going to be expensive. However, robots teleoperated by humans are more likely. A Japanese venture company has experimentally opened a cafe where customers are served by teleoperated robots they developed. The pilots of these robots are people who have difficulty leaving home due to severe disabilities or intractable diseases, such as amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS. By operating these robots, these people can leave their rooms, work, and interact with people outside. With further technological developments, such teleoperated robots could be used by those who cannot go out or who cannot meet in remote areas to build and maintain intimate relationships. Of course, these teleoperated robots can be used by both parties as a kind of media. Technology of so-called teledildonics is advancing recently, and it would in future allow intimate couple who live in mutually distant places travel together to other places. Being a partner of intimate relationship does not need to have a physical body. A virtual character controlled by AI is an autonomous robot without a physical body. Then, these virtual characters can be teleoperated by a human. Typically imagine CMI, intimacy via SNS, is included in this category, since we do not create a SNS account exactly the same as our real self, modifying to make it better. This point is covered later. Even if your partner is just an artifact and does not react to you, it can still be your partner of intimate relationship as long as you are satisfied with it. Your loved one may be a doll or an anime character. Your favorite pop singer or actor or actress are included in this category since they too do not react to you. Some of these people, when reading novels or manga, feel themselves as if they are the walls or ceiling of the room where the favorite characters are, looking at them. They do not dream that they develop intimate relationships with characters. Based on the discussion above, This study proposes to abolish these distinctions and consider all these types of relationship as intrinsic to CMI. From this perspective, all of the following are potential partners for humans to build and maintain intimate relationships. A. Robots that are created by humans and act autonomously according to a program created by humans. B. Robots created and operated remotely by humans. C. Virtual characters that are created by humans and act autonomously according to a program created by humans. D. Virtual characters created and operated remotely by humans. E. Dolls created by humans that do not act on their own. F. Virtual characters created by humans that do not act on their own. Needless to say, these categories are examples of typical ones, and there can be innumerable intermediates. All of the above are variations of a mixture of humans and man-made artifacts, as well as potential intimate partners for humans, regardless of their autonomy or physical existence. The concept of CMI in this study includes all of these variations. Such a perspective has an important significance in a society in which CMI is becoming the new normal, in which people and computers do not exist separately. CMI, in this sense, benefits a wide range of people. CMI can overcome physical distance, a significant barrier to intimate relationships. Teledildonics, still often seen as eccentric, may also become indispensable in the future for couples who are forced to be distant from each other. CMI is also of great help in maintaining human-to-human relationships in situations such as the coronavirus pandemic, in which the spread of serious illnesses continues indefinitely and physical contact between humans is severely restricted. For those who do not have or do not want to have an intimate human partner, an advantage of CMI is the possibility of choosing to have an intimate relationship with a non-human partner. This is especially beneficial for those who often have difficulty finding human partners, such as sexual minorities, the elderly, and people with physical and mental disabilities. In addition, people who do not want to be victims of unwanted sexual activity, for example those women engaging sexual services, as well as those who do not want to be the perpetrators of unwanted sexual activity, may consider CMI a better option for engaging in intimate relationships. For those who prefer non-human partners may find robots and characters as the primary and best choice. Of course, the choice of CMI is at the discretion of the individual and is unlikely to be forced by others. CMI, like same-sex marriage, expands the options for those who desire it, and does not limit anyone's freedom. The spread of CMI is expected to bring about two further changes. First, CMI enables one to easily modify his or her profile and appearance. When social media users start using CMI platforms, they first create their own accounts and register their profiles, and possibly create their own avatars. When using multiple social media, they choose different information to register according to the nature of the service and the purpose of its use. In these online services, most people do not present themselves exactly as they are in the real world, omitting certain information about their real selves in their user profiles. Users typically choose their best-looking photo, disclose only backgrounds and experiences they are proud of, and hide information and embarrassing experiences they do not want to be known. A previous research found that men were more likely to misrepresent personal assets, relationship goals, personal interests, and personal attributes, whereas women were more likely to misrepresent weight. Another study found, when an individual's behavior conformed to his or her digital self-representation. That is, people assigned to more attractive avatars in immersive virtual environments were more intimate with colleagues in a self-disclosure and interpersonal distance task than those assigned to less attractive avatars. Similarly, participants assigned taller avatars behaved more confidently in a negotiation task than those assigned shorter avatars. Having an appearance and/or character different from your real self in the online world is the gospel for many who are not always happy with their real self. The same applies when building intimate relationships in CMI. Having an intimate relationship with a partner using robots and/or avatars that are more attractive than oneself is an effective way to improve your impression from your partner, maintain one's privacy, and protect oneself from physical risk. For those who feel uncomfortable with their innate sex and/or appearance, building an intimate relationship with a partner adopting the desired sex and/or appearance means effectively regaining one's true self. Another change due to CMI is the widespread use of multiple selves. People often use more than one social network, presenting different selves in various online services. Different social media is also used simultaneously. For example, one chats with friends via WhatsApp while retweeting news on Twitter and discussing on a Facebook group. Some users even own multiple accounts in a single social media platform such as Twitter. A survey in 2015, conducted in Japan, revealed that 62.7% of high school students and 50.4% of college students own several Twitter accounts. On average, high school students own 3.1 accounts, while college students own 2.5 accounts. They have different accounts because they want to build different social networks, as different selves that have different characters. In other words, one can exist simultaneously at different places with different appearances in virtual worlds, just as a ninja who uses shadow clones. They usually do not talk about those other account to the friend of a social network. They created those account because they wanted to make another relationship with another person on their own. In CMC, people use multiple services and accounts, so that different alter egos can simultaneously build independent social networks. Similarly, in CMI, people can build and maintain multiple intimate relationships simultaneously by using multiple selves. Nexon's online game Mabinogi has officially implemented the in-game marriage mechanism. The system takes effect when two players, of the opposite sex or of the same sex, agree to be spouses of each other at will. After going through the prescribed procedures and the wedding ceremony, the two accounts will become a married couple. Their status is displayed as married, and they enjoy higher in-game ability when they are together. In-game marriages may or may not lead to real-world marriages. A female game player married a man in-game while having a husband in her real life. Such behavior reminds us of polyamory, a particular practice that refers to simultaneous consensual romantic relationships with multiple partners and that has often been perceived as infidelity and, thus, unjustifiable. In recent years, this practice has come to be understood as a kind of sexual orientation, being differentiated from more problematic behaviors, such as swinging relationships. In these relationships, people have somewhat different ideas about fidelity or happiness. A previous studies proposed a concept of agentic fidelity, which is a certain form of commitment among polyamorists that relies upon acute self-knowledge and choice exercised through the ability to express needs and boundaries. Other studies found that consensual non-monogamy individuals can compartmentalize their emotional and physical needs to a higher degree than traditional monogamous individuals are able to, which might be why they tend to be happier in their relationship. A person in CMI may enjoy multiple intimate relationships as different self, sometimes with a robot, sometimes in a virtual world, sometimes changing appearance or gender. These changes are, in fact, not quite new. The transformation of marriage and familyship was already underway before the spread of CMI. When Foucault argued, in 1976, that intimate relationships were no longer limited to the institution of marriage that defined what was allowed, forbidden, and prescribed for spouses by in matters of sexual practice, intimacy was already in the process of transformation. And Giddens pointed out in 1992, that intimacy would be transformed. The familyship will survive as long as it is selected, constructed, and maintained at the will of the individual involved. He called this pure intimacy. Their claim can be interpreted that the patriarchal family system should be dismantled, which is gradually progressing. With CMI, the intimacy discussed in Giddens will be further transformed. Intimacy would not be pure under CMI in the sense that Giddens says. In the context of the pure relationship, trust can be mobilized only by a process of mutual disclosure. However, an intimate relationship in CMI does not involve exchanging holistic devotion or self-disclosure with a single partner, but rather developing a network of thin and widespread connections with multiple partners. Such intimacy is similar to Asano's concept of selective commitment, a weak relationship in which a person determines the level of commitment according to the relationship with the counterpart. There are already widespread relationships in our society, especially among young people, that are connected by different types of intimacy. In such selective commitment, in human relationships, self-disclosure itself also depends on the counterpart of the communication and situation, not just regarding how much to disclose, but regarding whether to create and modify the self to be disclosed, as well as which of them should be disclosed at what situation and timing. Mori pointed out that the intimacy connected by the created self is a Kara relationship. Kara is an abbreviation for character, although it is not used with the literal meaning. Kara is not innate, but socially created. It is simply typified and summarized in a relatively fixed pattern. People choose Kara according to their role, partner, and situation in a group of friends. Hirano pointed out that people are not covering their original and true self by temporary artificial selves such as Kara, but rather each Kara is the one of themselves, called individuals. The aggregate of these are the whole of themselves. Yamaguchi developed Hirano's claim and pointed out that a social media user has a individual for each account, as well as that individual is an amalgam of the user and social media architecture. If each individual is the one's true self, the meaning of pure in Giddens also changes. Pure relationships, once transformed in the above sense, no longer require full self-disclosure. The traditional notion that having multiple intimate relationships is infidelity will also have to be revised. What is important is whether each self, in other words individual, is faithful in each relationship within the scope of the person's own selective commitment. Many will find that these relationships are exactly what Grandvetter called weak ties. Intimate relationships are formed by innumerable weak intimate relationships, just as a person's social network on the internet consists of a web of weakly tied relationships by multiple social media. In this sense, the socialification of familyship can be said to be the web of weak intimacies formed among various synthetic personalities with various levels of commitment. Familyship is about to change from traditional institutionalized familyship, institutionalized intimacy, as in Foucault, to a familyship based on Giddens' pure intimacy, intimate relationship with holistic commitment, and now to socialified familyship, the web of weak intimate relationships with selective commitment. CMI is one of the main driving forces in such a shift. However, again, the change is an increase in alternatives. You can still choose to build intimate relationship in traditional way, with deep commitment and full disclosure to the single partner. This study broadened the concept of CMI and placed intimate relationships with robots and AI in the context of CMC. This study also showed that there is no essential difference between relationships with sexual contact with robots and intimate relationships without sexual contact, such as online-only connections or love for characters. None of them are essentially different from the intimate relationships between humans in the real world, all of which are variations of the intimate relationships that human-computer synthetic personalities build. This study also discussed the advantages and disadvantages of CMI and argued that the former outweighs the latter. By allowing multiple identities and intimate relationships, the CMI broadens people's alternatives and reduces risks associated with building intimacy. This study also pointed out that the spread of CMI has promoted the transformation of family relationships, such as marriage and intimacy between people, as well as that this transformation, in other words, socialification of familyship, has been a part of the spread of weak ties brought about by the dissemination of the Internet. The dismantling of marriage systems and familyship has long been discussed in the field of sociology, however, it has not yet been realized. Signs of change have been around for some time, although this change is not yet effective in society. Many people still seem to cling to traditional systems and norms. Accordingly, strong social resistance to CMI is expected, as discussed in this study. In particular, the behavior of choosing non-humans as partners in intimate relationships and that of having multiple, simultaneous intimate relationships would cause harsh social reactions. Despite the problems, partnering with non-humans in intimate relationships is not a negative choice by elimination, but a positive choice for safe enjoyment. In addition, having multiple, simultaneous intimate relationships is not a betrayal of others, but an action based on the idea of releasing people from traditional bondage and allowing sexual diversity. This study used some surveys and previous studies conducted in Japan. However, the discussion in this study is also applicable to the rest of the world, since the development of technology is universal and thus the societies worldwide encounters the pressures of change in the same direction. And again, this is not a should-be argument. This is a change that is underway as humans continue to pursue happiness by allowing more diverse range of choices with respect to the sphere of intimate relationships. We are headed toward a society in which the man who married Hatsune Miku and the woman who married a man in-game different from her real husband can live with confidence in their choices. Thank you for listening.